Perfect. Well, welcome everybody to Connecting Communities Through Story. This is a space to ignite, illuminate, and inspire. So I'm Lauren McLean. I'm also with April Pickerainen somewhere on the screen. I always get lost on Zoom. And Christi Livingstone's with us as well today, as well as Anne-Marie Fenn. So thank you everyone for joining us.
Hey. And I guess before we start, I will share that I am joining today on the traditional and unceded territories of the Hunkaminam speaking people. It is also where the Musqueam people continue their cultural traditions. And as I think about our connection to the land, the theme of interconnection could not be more fitting in terms of our way of being and our way of thinking and doing. And as we work to decolonize education, I'm always mindful of how my actions have a ripple effect, positive or negative.
Lovely. And a quick review sort of on the purpose of why we've sort of come together in this format is to really bring together educators from all across BC and now actually across Canada through these free monthly workshops. So thank you so much for joining us. This work to collaborate and share experiences really helps everybody. So.
Great. And we'll be recording this and posting on the Teach Outdoors website for future reference. And so just a review that our work was really grounded in the Spiral of Inquiry by Linda Kaiser and Judy Halbert. It grounds our work because it creates provides a framework for us as we think through our everyday teaching and learning, and then our own teaching and learning as well.
And so again, sort of the main umbrella of why we wanted to focus on interconnections were, these are just a few, it's definitely not an exhaustive list. We could go on and on. Some of which both Anne-Marie and Christi will dig into a bit more through their own storytelling experiences. But for April and I, when we were sort of putting our heads together, it was this idea of holistic understanding, that we are supporting critical thinking and encouraging sort of this mindset of the real world relevance. Why is this so important? How is it outside of just our little circle that we think of? To encourage and develop problem solving skills. We really feel that it promotes creativity understanding, as well as, again, this idea of outside of our circle. So thinking about global awareness and enhanced retention. When they make these connections, the learning, it just gets so much deeper. They make their own connections and they retain it. So quickly, my little intro, as I know I've mentioned in our other months, that my main inquiry that I'm passionate about this year is to sort of find the connections between our indoor outdoor classroom learning spaces. And so for me, where it really does interconnect are in terms of the routines that we put in place in the classroom, as well as our expectations. So routines are when they come in first thing in the morning, they put their bags away, they do shared reading with a partner, we meet in circle, set our intentions. Those are all the routines that we put in place for our indoor classroom, and the same goes for our outdoor classroom. When we first exit outside, we usually play a nature game. So it's we're trying to promote those social skills. We go on a nature walk, meet in circle, do an activity, meet in circle again. So there's a lot of overlap, consistency, predictability to our routines, and very similar with our expectations. So, we clean up after we're done in the classroom. And if we're ever doing some nature art, sculptures outdoors, especially if it's on a sidewalk, we always clean up to make sure that it's a nice, safe space for strollers, for people on bikes, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm really interested in this year.
Oopsies. Goes this way. So I also was thinking about interconnection, and for me, I think about an interconnected systems that are a system that is really supportive of the idea of human flourishing. And when we think about that, how do we help children become kind and responsible human beings, caring for the land and recognizing that our relationships with the land is also a reciprocal one? So when I think about that, I think about the importance of aligning in our vision as a district and even within our school, finding that coherence within our staff and family members. And then also, as you hear the stories today from Anne-Marie and from Christi, you'll notice interconnections woven through the environment, the pedagogy, and then even just within and with the community. And at the center of all of that is our own perspectives and our own values and beliefs, and recognizing that there's an interconnection with those pieces and those ideas as we engage with learners and with each other, and with the learning and teaching. And so as we dive into Anne-Marie and Chrissy's sharing of their stories, we wanted to leave you with a quote from Joe Crona, to think about that interconnectedness of our own stories. So she wrote, "What is my story? What is your story? How does who I am affect these words I share with you? How does who you are shape how you receive these words? This is a good place to begin our conversation." And it's from her book, Weiwa. And if you haven't read it, it's a really wonderful one, thought-provoking. So without any more talking from me and Lauren, we'll pass it over to Anne-Marie, who is a teacher in Richmond School District, and we're really excited to hear from
her. Thank you. So I'll be looking at interconnections in the school and in the community. And then if you want to just look at the next slide, as April, I'm also joining from the unceded territory of the people of the Hunkaminam language group. And for me, connecting with the land is probably what I feel is the most important part of my job. And I feel very fortunate to have this role. And when I see the joy that the students experience in the variety of activities, I'm rewarded with great joy as well. So we're on this journey together, and I have the fortune of seeing that growth over time. Next slide, please. So as April said, I am a teacher in Richmond. I teach at Anderson Elementary, and I have a unique position in that I provide prep time to teachers, but I take classes outdoors. So it's completely outside. There is no indoor space. So whether it's freezing, raining, hailing, we're outside. And I often joke with the students that if there's a tsunami, I'll teach them how to swim. So this year I'm working with grades K to 4. It just depends on scheduling and things, but it can be anywhere up to grade 5. I have 11 divisions this year, both English and French immersion classes. And I've just included a photo there of the outdoor spaces that we get to enjoy. We have a school garden with garden beds, our shed, seating area, lots of plants, and lots of adventures happen there. And we also have the fortune of backing onto Garden City Park, which is a huge, beautiful park in the middle of Richmond. And we spend a lot of time in the park as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the number of interconnections we have with the community. And so I just wanted to share some activities and some projects that we've been working on that connect us to the community, and just how important that is. And I think that forming the connections helps the students see the possibilities and understand that their actions can have an impact. So something that's very simple that we do on a regular basis is we go into the local park and we clean up, we pick up garbage. And it's because there's 11 divisions, even if we each go once a month, it's still a lot. And we regularly meet staff, and the reaction is always the same. They're so positive. They're so grateful to the students. So we actually took a picture with one of the staff who just happened to be there, because we'd come back with a huge amount that we'd found. And the thing with that is we often go to places where the city staff aren't going. So they'll come and they'll pick up from the garbage cans, but we're going into the bushes, into the forest, and cleaning up. And so suddenly there's masses of garbage at the garbage cans. So on this particular day, we were explaining where we'd been and why there was so much. And And this person was just thrilled and thanking the students, and the students were so excited and they felt so good. And I've noticed a real impact in that they're starting to notice, look, Miss Fenn, there's garbage. Look, there's a wrapper there. And they understand now that around our playground where students are throwing away their wrappers, often it's ending up on the ground because they're just tossing it towards and not taking that time. So they're pointing it out to people, and they're going back and saying, hey, your wrapper missed the garbage. And they're requesting, can we go and pick up garbage today? And we talk about, if we don't pick it up, where does it end up? And they all will say, it'll be in the ocean, and we're helping the earth, and we're helping the world, and we're helping the birds. And so they're understanding that no piece of garbage is too small, and even something tiny, a bird could peck it and swallow it. And so there's a real, from something so simple, there's a real increased awareness. And I've had, staff members talk to me about how for them growing up, picking up garbage was a punishment. Like you've done something wrong. Okay, you're going to go out and you're going to clean up the school grounds. We'll show you. And now I have students like, please, like pleading with, please, can we go into the park and clean up today? Which is wonderful. So very simple, but there's so much learning that comes out of it. Okay, next slide, please. So this was a real collaboration with many different people. We created these garden signs for our school garden. So we planted indigenous plants, so plants that are common to this area that grow in our area. And we wanted to do more than just have them in the garden. And the students, of course, did all the planting. So myself and the librarian and the technology teacher at the time wanted to collaborate and bring those three spaces together. So bring technology, the research potential in the library, and the outdoors all together. And we thought this was a beautiful melding of the three, is to create the signs. So a grade 6-7 class did all the research of the plants. The teacher in the library helped them find all the information. They got to work with the actual plants in the outdoor classroom. And then they recorded, so they wrote a little blurb about each of the plants. They were assigned in partners. They did one in English, one in French, and then they did an audio recording. And we also reached out to Nora Stogan, who is one of the Aboriginal success teachers for K-7 in our district. And she connected us with Jill Campbell, who is in the Musqueam Language and Cultural Department. Jill Campbell provided the translations, the names of all the plants in Hunkaminam. And then she also created the audio files. So she did recordings of Tristan and Emery Point, who are the sons of the late Terry Point. So Terry Point used to work in the Richmond School District. Sadly, he passed away several years ago now. And he was a well-known Musqueam knowledge keeper. And so it was just such beautiful to have the recordings from his sons. And so when you scan the QR codes, you're taken to a web page on our school website where you can choose to listen to the names in Hunkaminam. So there's a separate recording for each of Tristan, one for Emery. And then there's a separate section where you can listen, you can click on the link and listen to it in French or listen to it in English. And it's just a very nice interactive space, and parents are out there waiting to pick up their students after school. So it's a wonderful opportunity for them to see what's going on. People, I find, they see QR codes, they're curious, they'll scan it. And so I see a lot more. Everybody has their cell phones with them. So that just became this beautiful collaboration, and so many parts came together. And now it's a permanent addition to our school. And the beautiful thing is that they can be shared. So I have shared them with other schools and teachers within our district. And I wrote to Nora and I said, I'm going to be in this webinar and there's going to be teachers from other districts. Is it okay to share? And she said, absolutely. So if there's a way that it can be shared, I can send you a file and we can get them into as many hands as possible, because they're, they can be printed and laminated. We had them printed on special plastic so it will last and weather, because even with laminating, with the rains that we get, it's hard for them to last. But so I'm happy to listen and chat about that, about getting it into people's hands. Thank you. So next slide. So that was a little while ago. This is our current project, and I'm so excited about this. We are creating a living willow dome in our outdoor space. So I wanted to do this for years, and we have this connection now with Kwantlen Polytechnic University. So in the fall, myself and 2 other teachers from our school went to an event, and we got to chatting, and they were very keen on forming connections with the community and the schools in the school district. So the 2 teachers that I went with took their classes on a field trip in the fall, and we're within walking distance. So it's only about a 20-minute walk. And then in January, at our last Pro D Day, in the afternoon, we booked a session for the staff over at the farm. And we all walked over, and it was a tour, and they were explaining everything. And there was these piles of willow branches. And I asked, like, well, you know, what's happening with the willow? And they said that they were building a willow dome. And I said, oh my gosh, this is something we've always wanted to do at Anderson, and we want to create a willow dome. And they said, absolutely, you should do it with us. And this whole project emerged. So it went from there to, well, why don't you come and join us when we are building the dome, so you can learn how to build it, the students can understand it, and then you can take it back and build your own. So our administrators have been all on board, and they helped coordinate it. So I was able to take the morning and take 2 classes, and then my others were covered because I have 4 classes in the morning. So we took 2 classes for the morning, and it was wonderful. So in these slides, before going to Kwantlen, they actually came to our school and did a presentation to the 2 classes. And they talked about the willow, what are the benefits of willow, that, you know, it's flexible, you plant it in the ground, it starts rooting right away because of the special acid that it has. And then the students got to practice weaving. They brought bamboo stakes and set them up in the garden bed there. And then those are the willow branches. So if you go to the next slide. So that was a week before the field trip. And then this was us at Kwantlen. So we walked over again, it's about a 25-minute walk. And the top left is what was waiting for us when we arrived. So they pre-planted the main willow boughs to help them start to get settled and start rooting. And so then it went from separate ones and started by tying the roof. And then you can see the students were all involved in putting in the cross branches, which was 1 willow and 1 osier dogwood, tying them, framing it all. So by the time we left and started the weaving process, so the bottom left is what it looked like when we left. And then while 1 class was working on the dome, half of the class worked on the dome. The other half was that middle picture at the bottom. They were hammering in bamboo posts and weaving willow branches around to delineate what was a garden bed and what was the pathway, because they found that people were trampling the plants because they didn't really understand what was path and what wasn't. And then they would switch, and then so everybody got a chance to weave and build the dome. Everybody got a chance to create fences. And then the other class was they actually have a large dome that is their warm place for seeding and seed starting. And so students were in there using a special tool to make clay seed or soil seed pots and planting seeds. And then they were out in the community garden also weeding, and then they would switch. And then, so the first half, 1 class was in the dome, 1 class was doing the seeds and weeding, and then they switched. So everybody had a chance to participate in all the activities. And we knew it was a success when we said, okay, it's time to go. And they're like, what? We're leaving? And so it was so positive, and they're thrilled. And Kwantlen wants to continue the collaboration, and they're interested in pursuing creating curriculum that can be shared with our school district, with other school districts. So It's very exciting. It's kind of, this is a pilot program that just came about. And the wonderful thing is, so that was, today's Wednesday. Yesterday was the field trip, and we started our own Willow Dome today. Unfortunately, I didn't have time after cleaning up to upload some pictures. So the first class of the day, and because for me, if every class participates, then there's that sense of ownership. Like, I helped create this, I'm going to take care of it. So rather than a couple of classes build it and suddenly it's there and nobody else knows why or what it is, everybody's taking a part in building it, and everyone has that pride that they created it. So today we, like the first class, moved the furniture. We had to physically move picnic tables to create the space. And then they noticed there was garbage, so we did garbage cleanup because we don't want to plant our willows in garbage. And then the rest of the day was removing the wood chips, so until we got down to soil, and that took a large part of the day. So we have a huge circle with a big pile of wood chips around, and then we've started digging a trough that we will fill in with the 10 bags of sea soil that are in the back of my car. So they have a really rich beginning to take root, and super exciting. And we're hoping to get it all completed and everything in the ground and looking more like that structure before spring break. So it has a chance to really root while the temperature is cool. And hopefully we come back to everything alive and growing and looking beautiful. So I'm aware that maybe I'm over time, or I'll just go quickly through this. So this was just to, when I was thinking about all the different activities and how those interconnections are happening. So absolutely, through the First Peoples of Learning, especially connecting to the land and learning supports the well-being of the self, the family, the community, the land, the spirits, and the ancestors. That learning is holistic, reflexive, reflective, experiential, and relational, and focused on connectedness. And that really resonates with me, just making those connections. And really, for me, if students have an emotional response, they feel joy, they're going to remember that. This becomes a special place that they want to take care of. And of course, learning involves recognizing the consequence of one's actions. So even like the trauma that is experienced when someone even accidentally steps on a worm, now, because these creatures have become so important through talking about them and understanding that everything has a part and a role, they take it really seriously, and they, they stepped on it. And so then we have to talk about that, and it was an accident, and we're sad, but we know we want to take care of it. And so I see those really deep connections happening, and across grade levels. So students are having similar experiences, so it might be entered into slightly differently, but then they're developing that awareness and their understanding, and they have that commonality between them. So they're reinforcing it, they're helping each other, and they're understanding our responsibility, our collective responsibility to looking after our spaces and each other in those spaces. And then the cross-curricular connections, I mean, there's so much that happens. Any activity that whether you're intending to or not, you can pull out math, science, language arts, ADST. We're learning to use tools and safety. And so I put the painting of the poppy there that one of the students did, because for me, that's sort of is all-encompassing example. Is we plant poppy seeds in the fall. The students watch them grow as they come up in the spring, and then they see them in full bloom. We always look closely, draw them, paint them. Then we harvest the seed pods. And then in the fall, after they've all dried out, we collect the seeds, we package them, and then those are the seeds that annually get planted. So they're seeing that whole cycle, the importance of seed saving, and they now know when Flanders Fields was written because they remember when the poppies are blooming. So it's no longer September, January. I mean, like, think about when we see them, it's June, so May and June, they must have been, that's when the poem was written. Next slide, please. And so then thinking along those lines of projects and connecting to community. So coming up for us will be, we've connected with Birds Canada this year, and they came out in the fall to do a bird count with us around the Christmas season. And they've reached out again to ask us if we would want to participate in a bird bio blitz that happens in May. And that's a local bird count. So of course we said, absolutely, we'd be very interested in that. And it really brings me, my heart, joy when I hear the kids saying, look, there's a junco. Oh, there's a spotted towhee. And oh, Miss Fenn, look up there at the spotted towhee. And there's a song sparrow. So we're seeing them so much and interacting with them so much that they're really starting to recognize them. And then the other project we're going to be involved in is called Bimby, Butterflies in My Backyard, with the David Suzuki Foundation. And it will also be a BioBlitz, but focusing on our local pollinators and looking at bees and hummingbirds and doing a count. And then we've done that for years now. And then we send in the results, and then they have a report that they do. And so it's really helping with their research too. So the students understand, because I show them the report, like, look, these are numbers that we helped with. This many butterflies were seen in BC, and you helped to contribute to that. Scientists use the information. So it's that real world connection and understanding. And these are open to anyone. So anyone can sign up to join and do the Bird Bio Blitz and the Bimby Bio Blitz. And that's it. So thank you for inviting me today.
Wow, thank you for sharing your story, Anne-Marie. I'm taking so many notes on the different ideas, and even just thinking about our context too, and how it's so grounded in the connection to community. Okay, Christi, over to you.
Hi. So I'm talking about a little bit about interconnections in the middle years, which is my context here. I just finished with a very energetic group of grades 6, 7, 8 students today. And I also come from a Montessori background, which kind of positions me in a place where I really feel quite passionate about putting grades together. So that connection between grades 6, 7, and 8 and having those middle years learners working together is just something to think about and consider. So I am joining today from the unceded ancestral Coquitlam territory. And right where the school that I'm in is actually between the power lines and a fish bearing, like a salmon bearing creek. And why I feel like that's important is because the Coquitlam people have such a story of resilience with regard to the Coquitlam watershed and the the power lines going up there and kind of cutting off their resources with the salmon. And I'm just so grateful for the work that they do, have done and continue to do with regard to trying to preserve our salmon here in this area and help people become aware of how important it is to our ecosystem. So I am going to kind of situate in the middle years with the idea of interconnections. This is from Creating Pathways for All Learners in the Middle Years, which is a book by Leighton Schnellert, Linda Watson, Nicole White-S, and Faye Brownlee. And it's kind of like my middle years Bible. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to highlight here. The idea of developing identity, which is so massive, of course, in this middle years time, and active and personal learning, and really challenging and challenging exploratory and integrative curriculum. The thing is, anything that middle school kids are learning, it's got to have something to do with them. if it doesn't have anything to do with them, they're just not interested. And they also want to know, like, how does what I'm learning connect to like the world around me? Because they're trying to really position themselves in the world and understand their place in the world. So those all really tie into that idea of middle years philosophy. So when I'm talking about being interconnected and making connections, these are kind of the main areas where I feel like I'm always trying to make connections in a middle years classroom. That piece around identity. So really, you know, digging into personal histories and who am I? You know, what are my values? What are my beliefs? Where do those things come from? And then with community, just really trying to draw out students' experiences in the world. So like what do they know about things already, and how can I create space for those things that they already know with the work that they're doing in the classroom. And then I really try to help them make sense of the things that are going on in the world. So if there is big current events happening and it's being talked about outside of the classroom, it's being talked about inside of the classroom. And so trying as much as I can to help bring those connections in and talk about it and try to make sense of it with students. And then lastly, the metacognitive piece is just really trying to be intentional about naming those metacognitive pieces, because they really are trying to make sense so much of how their brains work and how, you know, their brains and their bodies work together. And so just trying to really highlight those metacognitive pieces and draw those connections is a big part of interconnection in a middle school classroom as well. So this is a quote from that same book. And I think it kind of highlights what I'm talking about. The active, purposeful learning involves teachers helping students see the world in new ways, engage in investigations, and connect what they're learning from curriculum content to themselves and to the world. And yeah, it really feels like I'm always trying to do this, connect back to the kids and connect to the world. So this is a project that I've done a couple of times with middle schoolers, and I actually did it with a grade 4-5 class as well, a little bit kind of, you know, not maybe as in depth, but my my grade 4-5 students really loved it as well. And it basically is a timeline of their life. And so we kind of create these tree rings, and those tree rings tell the story of who these kids are. So yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about like where, you know, where kind of the bits and pieces of this project.
Should I go on to the next slide? Yeah. Okay.
So this is the curricular connections that I can draw into this project. I really focus on the competency of understanding historical significance with this project. It's really not heavy content-wise, but very competency driven. And we talk a lot about writing and design processes, and you know, because there are several kind of iterations of their timeline as they go through. They need to like sort and process and plan and write and rewrite. So language arts is a big part of it. And then we start with investigating trees. So there's some science that gets included in there, and then the math as well. So I try to like match it up with the same sort of time that we're talking about circles and circumference and area, so that they can apply those skills directly. So we start out with this tree study. So I have like a bunch of like cross sections of trees that I think were meant for like a wedding or something. They were like place settings, but I just grabbed them because they're such great, you know, easy to transport pieces. And kids will just start by like naming and noticing and labeling those parts of the tree from the cross section. So looking at, you know, what is the pith, what is the outer bark, what is, you know, what are the different pieces, that things that we can recognize and notice. We talk about estimation and like just judging from the size of it. How tall do you think the tree was? Like how, you know, how old do you think it is? What kind of branches do you think it had? Those sorts of things. And then actually counting the rings to try to calculate the age. I do a ton of lessons around understanding significance that are like at least 3 or 4, you know, lessons about what is historical significance, and like talking about it and doing like small activities. We do lots of literacy lessons around figurative language and literary devices and how to practice and play with poetry. And then circles, which I already mentioned, and then the idea of like inquiry research and data collection. So it does involve, because it's a timeline of their life and they're looking back to like the year they were born, they don't know. They're like, I don't know what happened when I was 1. So they have to do a lot of interviewing and talking to the people who have seen them grow up since they were born, and reaching out to, you know, friends, family, relatives, anybody who can share some stories and some significant events in their lives. And then they also look at historical events that have happened since that time of their birth. So they're looking at like things that happened in the world, like doing some investigative research that way. And I think I'm always kind of conscientious around who my learners are. Sometimes that idea of interviewing family about your personal history can be a bit triggering or a bit sensitive. So there have been times where I've tailored it to, let's just look at historical events, and you don't necessarily have to include personal things, just depending on who your kiddos are. And then they start to construct these timelines that integrate their personal history, their local history, and their global history. Yeah, so this is just like some photos that I took of what the project looked like when we came to the end. So they create these fingerprint poems as the pith, which is kind of like their you know, their maybe their hobbies, or they might just describe their fingerprint, which is kind of their identity. And that becomes the center of their cross section. And then the first 8 years of their life are the heartwood, and from the year they were 9 until present day is their sapwood. And then on the outer edge where the bark would be, they just are encouraged to use words that describe them, either that other people would use to describe them or how they view themselves. And that's just like we talk about, like, this is what you see on the outside of the tree. And so what do people see when they look at you? And this part of the project is really not hugely assessed. I'm doing most of my assessment like along the way, just with smaller activities, and like they do like a rough draft of their timeline and that sort of thing. So I'm really trying not to assess this product, but they know that this is where they're going. And so that like really helps them to buy into what they're learning about, and those other small activities, like really, you know, pay attention to what we're doing when we're talking about the radius and the circumference and these parts of the circle, because you'll need that information when you're measuring your cross section of a tree. So it's just kind of like another way to like helping them connect those pieces to something bigger, is really what supports the buy-in of the whole learning process. So yeah, that's it. That's one example of an interconnected project.